His memory is his strength. How betrayal changed his life forever. My friends and family used to call me the elephant. You think I'm that big? Not at all. I'm an average height and weight of 5 feet 7 inches and 77 pounds. No, they called me elephant because I have an amazing ability to memorize almost anything. My name is Peter Marchand, and I'm a natural anomaly. I'm not good at math, but ask me what phone number our family had in 1982 at Camp Grayling, and I'll tell you. It's not that hard since I was an Army brat and we changed duty stations every 2 or 3 years. I can also give you the exact address, street number, street name, and zip code. My teenage life can be reduced to the question, Peter, what's Aunt Marge's new phone number? I swear my parents and siblings saved thousands of dollars by not spending pencils and paper to write down the number, but just asking for it when I was around. It was helpful. For them. And they appreciated it. What they didn't like was that I was memorizing everything that was said, even 2 to 3 years in advance. I couldn't recite the events of a longer time, but I still remembered the gist of it. I told you we were going to go to the McGregor's party. Peter, didn't I tell your mom about the party at the McGregor's? Yes, Dad. You told her last Saturday during the hockey game in the second period. But Mom didn't know for sure if you could all go, so she said, I'll see if we can get a babysitter and I'll call you back. Guess who didn't get a hug from Dad or Mom that night? I was so taken advantage of my entire childhood. As a teenager, I realized that it would be better for me to keep this ability to myself. It was too late with family, but at least with new friends when we moved again, and again, and again, and again, it was possible. I made it a habit to ask my friends things like, what's the date? Or, are they going to play the Jets on Saturday or Sunday? Just to seem like a normal, forgetful person. However, I still used my ability to memorize everything. In 12th grade, in an interview with the school's career counselor, I asked him what professions would be the most lucrative. When I had to choose between being the head of a mob family in New Jersey, an arms dealer in Colorado, a plastic surgeon in Hollywood, and a criminal defense attorney anywhere in the world, I chose the least obnoxious. I became a lawyer, not the brightest, but one who remembers every law and every court decision I've ever read or heard of. I'm not a highly publicized criminal defense attorney. I'm just a tax lawyer who deals with income and expenses and knows all the ways to lower the tax burden for all hard-working citizens, including the wealthiest, the head of a mob family in New Jersey, an arms dealer in Colorado, and many plastic surgeons in Hollywood. I know all the loopholes, and if I had the chance, I might know all the fake breasts happily bouncing around in Los Angeles. Is everyone following along? Okay, now for the rest of the story. Fresh out of law school, I met Annabelle, an MBA student 2 years older than me. She was witty, sweet, and very outgoing. She was a magnet for a boring, average-looking, humble guy like me. They say opposites attract, and that's exactly what happened to us. While dating me, she was also dating others, and she made no secret of it. She even joked about the excuses she made when she was unavailable. Visiting friends, family emergencies, group work. Over the next 6 months of dating, she did a remarkable job of bringing me out of my shell. I still looked average, but I put behind me all the complexes I had developed as a child. I even became a fun guy. It's easy when you remember all the jokes you've ever heard and the time it takes to really make people laugh. As a result, we became very attached to each other. I was attached enough to Annabelle to ask if she wanted to date me on an exclusive basis. She pondered for a few days and then agreed to the new terms of our relationship. I officially became her boyfriend. It lasted 6 months and 10 days. Since September of that year, Annabelle's sister had been planning a ski vacation in British Columbia from January 15th to 17th. One day, Annabelle let slip, telling me she planned to visit her sister that same weekend. I let her go, following the principle that some people, if given enough rope, will hang themselves. And she did. Annabelle called me the following Monday. "How was your weekend?" I asked. "Wonderful," she replied. "We spent the whole weekend shopping and catching up, sister stuff." "And how's the skiing going in Whistler?" Everything good? I asked. I don't know what you mean, she replied. How would I know? Well, if she'd been paying attention to what her sister had been telling her over the last few months. How would you know? Your sister this weekend skiing in Whistler, that's how, I replied dryly. There was a long silence on the phone. I forgot, she finally said. Then forget my phone number too, I said and hung up. That was it. I've heard many stories of people getting tangled up in their own lies, and Annabelle screwed up right from the start. The next week, I got an email from Annabelle saying how sorry she was and explaining that she wasn't ready for an exclusive relationship at her age and shouldn't have misled me. I threw the letter in the trash. I spent the next 2 years mostly doing my new job at a local law firm. I had a few dates, but nothing serious. First, I had to work hard to prove myself and didn't have as much time to lay the groundwork for a real relationship. Second, the Annabelle episode made me wary of any emotional involvement. So for 2 years, I sought mostly pleasant female companionship and nothing more. One day I was referred to a new client who needed legal advice on a tax return due to some investments made during the last fiscal year. I was to meet with the CEO and the VP of Finance. When I was ushered into the conference room, there was a familiar face sitting at the table, Annabelle. The meeting went smoothly, and I ended up with a very happy new client. When the meeting was over, Annabelle approached me. Hi, stranger, it's good to see you, Annabelle said. Hi, Annabelle, I replied simply, concentrating on the delicate task of stowing my papers back in my briefcase. Listen, it's almost lunchtime. What if we go out to lunch and have a little chat? She said in a friendly way. I didn't want to, but at the same time I was curious. And she was still very nice. Did we have lunch? Of course we did. But right after lunch, we ended up at Annabelle's apartment for some serious sex. Bad memories are bad, but good sex is always good. That's how Annabelle and I got reacquainted, like two professionals. She wasn't in a relationship at the time, and I was still single. We started dating again. For the next 2 years, I had no idea that Annabelle was still as unfaithful as she had been before. I let it all go, forget what had gone before, and let the past be the past. Soon we were married. We lived happily for 63 months, 2 weeks, and 6 days. We had a lot in common, but I still hadn't shown my ability to remember everything. Apparently, I still wasn't sure about Annabelle, and continued to keep this secret. Over the past 2 months, Annabelle had been regularly late for work, making excuses about visiting friends, having emergencies, or urgent late work. These reasons seemed all too familiar, as they were her usual excuses when she'd lied to me years ago. But they could have been true, so I decided to let it pass. One day I had to go out of town for a couple days to meet with an accounting firm that was doing an independent audit of one of my clients who was in the process of selling their company. Back home Friday night, Annabelle and I made love. She was a tigress in bed. Shortly thereafter, I got up and headed for the bathroom adjacent to the bedroom. Annabelle never uses it because the mirror there is small and the lighting is poor. The toilet seat was up. I remembered the last time I had used it. I had lowered it just before I brushed my teeth. Now it was up, and there was a faint yellow stain on the rim of the bowl, which wasn't there last week. I've said before that I'm not the smartest guy around, but even my stupidity has a limit. Some man has used this restroom in the past week. The only door to the bathroom is in the master bedroom, so he must have been in there. Thinking back on Annabelle's past behavior and her recent string of suspiciously late returns home, I had an oppressive feeling that she was cheating on me. I just had to find out. I had 2 options. Just wait and catch her in an obvious lie, or take the initiative and get to the hard facts. I chose the latter because it would probably yield quicker results. The weekend passed painfully. I didn't feel very loving or caring, while Annabelle was the complete opposite. If it worked for my mom, it worked for me. I had a splitting headache all weekend. I played the part so well that Annabelle convinced me to see a doctor on Monday. On Monday morning, I visited several specialists, but not medical ones. First, I talked to a colleague who handled divorce cases, and then I met with a private investigator who could find out for sure if Annabelle was cheating. By the end of the day, Herb, the private investigator, had our house wired for audio and video. All I had to do was give Annabelle enough rope to hang herself. Well, it worked once. Resorting to the headache ruse, I told Annabelle that I needed to go for a couple days to see a top-notch neurologist recommended by my doctor. Despite my suspicions, I felt bad that she showed such concern for my supposedly poor health. I had to convince her that it was useless to go with me. She persisted that I needed her support, but finally gave up on the idea. She was so worried that I almost believed I was wrong in assuming she was cheating. How could my wife show so much love and care while at the same time cheating on me? It just didn't fit in my head. However, there was no turning back, or I would have to admit to my own lies. So on Thursday morning, she drove me to the airport. Then I quickly drove back into the city and checked into a hotel downtown. The more I thought about Annabelle's behavior over the past few days, the more convinced I became that I had wasted my money. As promised, I called her Thursday night. She showed genuine concern when I was evasive about all the tests I had to take that day and the ones coming up the next. Her genuine concern and outpouring of love over the phone made me feel so bad. By the end of the call, her emotions were so overwhelming that she struggled to speak while suppressing tears. What a tawdry person I was. I had trouble sleeping that night, consumed by guilt and remorse. I'd been such an asshole that I'd forgotten how much Annabelle loved me. Now I was sure my suspicions were unfounded. The next morning, a phone call from Herb proved me wrong. A few minutes later, I was sitting in Herb's office watching the video from the night before. The image was a little grainy, but I could see the front door, dining room, and living room from where I assumed our TV was. I heard a faint noise. Herb turned the knob, and there was the loud and distinct sound of keys unlocking the door. The door opened and Annabelle appeared, about to dial our code on the alarm system. Then a second person appeared in the doorway. It was Brad Schwartz, a co-worker of Annabelle's whom I had met several times at various company events. Tall and, I had to admit, more handsome than I was, Brad was married and had 2 small preschool-aged children. As soon as the door closed, he grabbed Annabelle and tried to kiss her. She pushed him away slightly and then collapsed into his arms and responded to his kisses. This was not the tentative kiss of 2 newcomers. It was the long and satisfying kiss of longtime lovers. With one hand, he caressed her body and pulled her to him, while with the other, he massaged her breasts. Slowly, without breaking the kiss, they walked to the living room. I wanted to scream my disgust and anger into the monitor. Soon, Brad had Annabelle on the couch and they were having sex. To me, her husband, the signs were obvious. Just then, the phone rang. I looked around the private investigator's office until I realized the sound was coming from the video. With Brad still having sex, Annabelle picked up the phone and looked at the display. Without saying a word, she pulled away from Brad and sat upright on the couch. "Hey, sweetie, how are you? How are you feeling?" That's when I realized I was looking at the other end of my phone conversation from the previous evening. Just for fun, I started repeating my version of the conversation for Herb. "Well, to tell you the truth, not really. I still have a headache, and all the tests today have left me completely exhausted," I replied. Brad stepped closer to her. Annabelle pushed him away but didn't let him go. She began to gently stroke his body. "You poor thing. How I wish I could have been there with you. You shouldn't have discouraged me from going with you," she said as she continued to stroke Brad, who was now dainty with her breasts. "What tests did you go through?" she asked. "Too many to talk about, honey. Too many, and there will be more tomorrow," I lied. "Did the doctor say anything about what might be causing the headaches? Any hints?" she asked with a concerned face barely visible behind Brad's body. Well, he's not sure. He said he prefers to run all the tests before he gives his opinion, but it could be nothing or it could be something serious, I said evasively. I'm so worried about you, honey. Brad interrupted her again. Pushing him back a little, she was finally able to gurgle, I love you. I love you too, I said, and remembered that I'd hung up the phone when the guilt overwhelmed me at the hotel. She threw the phone on the floor, grabbed Brad, and quickly started making love. I got up and got ready to leave. I'd seen enough and didn't want to see any more. I thought she was choking with emotion. Yeah, she was. It was actually Brad who was choking her. Herb asked me to sit down and watch another clip. From the darkness in the bedroom window, I realized it was late evening, and apparently the lovers had been doing it hours after my phone call. Brad and Annabelle were in bed. The view of the bed was from above, probably from the camera hidden in the smoke detector. Annabelle was making love to Brad. I know some men enjoy watching their wife cheat with another man, but not me. I was just crushed. Listen, Herb said. Annabelle's voice was barely audible. I've already told you, Brad. This is the last time. It shouldn't have come to this at all. It was a big mistake, Annabelle said, working his body diligently. I could call what we did by many names, but in no way a mistake, Brad replied. It's so good. We shouldn't stop seeing each other. Brad, I've made my decision, she said. I used to feel bad about cheating on Peter, but now that I'm at risk of losing him, I realize how much I love him, how much he means to me. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm afraid he's going to die, Brad. He's never been so sick before, and all these tests. Oh, Brad, I love him so much. More tears flowed. Under any other circumstances, those tears would have melted my heart. Her anguish was genuine. The problem was that the tears streaming down her cheeks and dripping from her face were mixed with her betrayal. I stood up again and headed for the door. Aren't you going to give her another chance, man? Herb asked. She really loves you. Man, I'd give anything to have a wife who loves me that much. Can't you forgive her? He added. I can't forgive her for one simple reason, I said. I can never forget it. The end.